Set blasters on full.
What's up, guys? So we're going to check out the S.H.Figuarts Star Wars Stormtrooper figure today from Bandai. Let's check out the packaging. I really like the packaging on this thing. Very classy looking with the black and the metallic lettering. On the side here, it almost looks like a Death Star texture in that silver there. I'm not quite sure if you can see it, but it's pretty awesome. On the back here, we have a bunch of Japanese writing, some Stormtroopers, and Darth Vader, all of which are pretty awesome. Another picture of the Stormtrooper here on the side. And on the top we got the Star Wars. And yeah, take a look at this gold metallic lettering here. It looks really nice. I like the way it's on the window there. You can see the accessories back there and the additional hands. Overall, really like the packaging here. So yeah, let's crack this packaging open and see what we got. And here is the Figuarts Stormtrooper in all its glory. So let's check out the sculpt first. Overall, I really like the sculpt on this. There are a few things that I find are a little off. Nothing really that big, but you know, let's first check out the helmet. You can see here on the profile that it looks a little flat there on that slope, and it's a little off from the movie, but overall it's pretty good. You can see some really nice details though on this helmet sculpt. You can see all these lines here; those are actually sculpted. It's got some sculpted notches there. The arm is as well a good sculpt, but there is a ridge that should be here when you look in the movie ones. It only has one ridge on it, and there should be, I believe, at least two, if not three. And this ridge here on the forearm, on the gauntlet, should be notched. Still pretty good sculpt again, but there are a few small omissions. You also see the codpiece and the legs are pretty accurate to the movie. The abdomen is a little bit high on those details. They should be kind of just poking out from the belt. There really shouldn't be any space underneath it. But again, it is really good detail. You can see the chest piece here. And this is a little off from the movies as well. It's a little bit more narrow in the movies, kind of like the Black Series has it. Should be about there. But it still doesn't throw it off. The proportions are still really good. You can see the nice wrinkles there in the neck. The notches on the shoulder strap are really nice. Again, you can see the nice abdomen sculpts in here, go all the way up and down into the section. I really like these helmet sculpts here. These are really deep in there, very clean, as well as the ridges there. And again, you can see those are all sculpted, as well as this section here under the eye. Those ridges are sculpted in, which is really nice. Now we'll check out the leg area. You can see here all the ridges again are really nice. Nice little detail here on the knee. Everything's very clean, looks really good. I really like the sculpt on the shoes here as well, the boots. You get some nice wrinkles in there, make them really look lifelike. The heels are pretty good. Again, nice clean ridges here. You can see more wrinkles in the black undergarment here by the top of the thigh and at the elbow here, which really gives it a nice effect. And you can see a pretty good detail here on the belt and the back piece, although this should be a notch circle and not just flat, and that should be a circle there and not a square. But again, it's just if you're really a stickler for movie accuracy. Alright, so let's check out the paint apps on this. I mean, there's really not much to say. It's a Stormtrooper. It's a fairly simple paint app. I will say, though, they use a really nice white glossy paint on this thing. You can see everything's really clean here, really clean on the helmet. All the paint here is really precise. I like it. You can see the blue lines here on the helmet, very precise. You can see a little bit of bleeding here in the mask, but that's really one of the few, if only, imperfections I've found in this paint app. Overall, really good job. Let's just take a little bit of a closer look at the helmet here so you can really get an idea of the detail. You can see the nice black lines on the nose ridge, nice clean blue lines here. You can see a little bit of paint on that cut, and that's really the only other imperfection I can say I've noticed. Again, you could just see a little bit of bleeding there on the mask, and those are really the only two issues with the helmet. Now, if we take a look at the abdomen, you can see some really clean paint here. Very nice, crisp paint on these little circles. Really nice. We'll take a look here on the hand. You can see a little bit there on the hand. It's a slight bleeding. That's really about it. This one looks much cleaner. But again, this is a really simple paint app. I mean, it's mostly white and black with some details here and there. And you can see on the belt here, we've got some nice crisp, clean gray lines on the inside detail of that belt. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, very simple. I think they executed it really well, though. So now let's take a look at the articulation. So the articulation's pretty good. It's a little bit disappointing for Figuarts, to be honest, but it's still fairly good for a guy in armor. So let's check out the head articulation here and see what we have. Now it goes back about that far. You can see it's limited by the armor right here. It's hitting the neck. It goes forward about that far. Again, it's an armor limitation. And side to side, it goes that far. Decent rotation on the side. And you can see it is a double jointed neck. So you can get a little pigeon walk movement here, front and back. And it does swivel completely around 360 degrees. Now let's take a look at the shoulder pads, which have a surprising amount of articulation. You can see they move away a good amount from the shoulder, and they do swivel. You can actually swivel them completely around. As you can see, I don't know why you would want to, but it's available if you do. And now let's take a closer look at the joint here. Let me zoom in. And you can see it's actually a ball joint there on the pad, and then that is connected to the shoulder by a hinge there, which is pretty interesting. Allows for a large variety of poses and movement, which is nice. Now let's take a look at the actual shoulder joint itself. Looks like it's a double ball joint. You can see you get some good rotation there on the one inside ball, forward and backwards. You can also go a little up and down here, and rotates the arm completely around. So definitely good articulation in the shoulder and the shoulder pads. Now let's take a look at the rest of the arm here. We have bicep swivel, which is always nice. Now before I forget, let me show you just how high you can get the arm up with the shoulder pad and shoulder articulation. You can see again it's limited by the armor. That's about as high up as you can get it, and it hits the helmet there. But all in all, pretty good on the shoulder and the arm. Like I said, you really get some good poses. You can move him up here, kind of make him look like he's almost a little short for his armor, a la Luke. And you can move him down so he looks like he's a bit taller. And again, we have the bicep swivel here. We have forearm swivel. Alright, so let's check out the elbow joint here. Now, this figure does have a double jointed elbow, but it really functions like a single jointed elbow. The top joint on the elbow is in an odd position. It's kind of way up here on the bicep armor. And because of that, you get maybe 2-3 degrees maximum movement out of it, and it's practically useless. And the bottom joint, you really have to kind of fiddle with the gauntlet armor here to make sure that you can get maximum range of motion. And even when you do, you're looking at just over 90 degrees. So now let's check out the wrist. It goes down about that much, up about that much, side to side, only a little. Does have full rotation, and you kind of have to play with the rotation to get maximum range of motion, but you can still see it's hitting the armor here on the top and the bottom, and that's kind of the limit. Seems like a lot of the joints on this figure are limited by the armor, which is to be expected when you're dealing with an action figure based on a guy in a suit of armor. So now let's take a look at the ab joints here. I'm really impressed with the ab crunch joint on this thing, I gotta say. Really good range of motion and not at all limited by the armor. Well designed. You can see it goes way forward, way back. I mean, that's great range of motion there. Also has some really good rotation and amazing side to side there. You can really get some nice dynamic poses with that ab crunch. You get a lot of movement on that. Now let's take a look at the waist, which also has some pretty good movement, especially when coupled with the ab crunch. You might have to fiddle with the belt a little bit, and it is a little stiff, but I've been able to get that thing completely around. And it does have a little front and backwards movement, as you can see. And we do have some side-to-side movement. Overall, the abdomen, torso area is great. Now let's take a look at the hips. The belt here is pretty flexible, so that won't really hinder the movement, but the armor is the issue here. So let's take a look at the joint. And it is a ball and peg joint here on the hip. Let me move this out of the way so you can kind of get a little bit better view of the joint here. I have to say I'm not overly impressed with the joint as a whole. You can get some decent outward motion, as you can see. When you're trying to move those legs forward and back, I mean, that's as far forward as you're getting. You can swivel the thigh a little to get a little more, and you're still not getting much. As you can see, that's where the armor is hitting right there, and that's the limiting factor. Same with going back. It's hitting right here. And you're not getting much farther than that. We do have full upper thigh swivel. Both sides move pretty decently, but I mean, it's really not helping you much when you're trying to move those legs around, as you can see, unless you want it to look really awkward. And there is no swivel below the knee. This is just from the looseness of the joint, not actually any swivel. The knee joints themselves are double jointed, but it's similar to the elbow joint, where it's kind of so high up in the armor you really don't get a lot of movement, and that's about it. That's all you're getting. You can use the top joint to get maybe an degree or two more of motion on the knee there. You see how it's hitting there? If you push it forward a little like this, you can get it tucked in and get like an extra degree, maybe two. Overall, I'd say they're just under 90 degrees. So now let's check out the ankles. We do have full rotation. You know, I have to say this is another one of the joints I thought could have been done better. This is about as much movement as we get up and down. And again, it's the armor here and here that are causing the limitations. We do have a joint on the toes, but it's not that useful. That's as far up as it goes, and it doesn't go down any farther. And it really feels and looks like it should be going farther up. And I can't see any reason for it not to. It doesn't look like there's anything hitting or rubbing, but I just can't get it any farther, and I'm afraid to force it too much farther. And we do have some ankle pivot, and again, it's not a huge amount. You see, that's as far as we're going to the outside, and that's as far as we're going to the inside. And I feel like they could have gotten more in there, but that's what we have. So overall, the articulation isn't bad. There's some joints that are really good on it, and some joints that I think could have been done much better. I do understand, though, it is a figure based on a guy in a suit of armor, so there's going to be some lack of range of motion naturally anyway, and I think it does mimic that fairly well. The legs are pretty disappointing, though, and the ankle joints are fairly disappointing. But again, overall, I mean, you can still get them in some pretty good poses. You're not going to get anything too dynamic, but you do get a fairly accurate sculpt, good proportions, and a really nice paint app. So now we'll take a look at his height as he stands. Looks like he's either exactly 6 inches or just a hair under. And it's really close to that 6-inch mark, though. Pretty on point as far as the scale goes, so nothing to complain about there. Let's do a little side-by-side comparison with the Black Series Stormtrooper. So you can see almost immediately the difference in the paint. I mean, he's got that nice glossy white paint, and you could already see I'm having trouble getting this Black Series to stand. The joints are really stiff, and it does have some nice ankle articulation, or at least a pivot. But yeah, there you go. Stand them next to each other, and I mean, that paint just immediately, it almost looks like it's a bluish, dull bluish color on the Black Series, and it's a really nice glossy white on the Figuarts, which is just great. Other than that, you can see some of the differences in the sculpt we have here. Let me get them right next to each other. I mean, height is pretty much on par with each other. You could see the proportional differences, though, in the helmets. I feel like the Black Series is a touch big compared to the proportions of the body. And you can see the ridges here on the biceps, which are missing on the Figuarts. You can also see the abdomen here. That sculpt detail is kind of lined up perfectly as in the movies, whereas the Figuarts is a little too high. Cod pieces, the Black Series is also a little off. I feel like the Figuarts is more movie accurate. Now, if we take a profile look, you can see what I was saying with the slope. I think the Black Series is a little bit better of a slope on the mask than the Figuarts, but all in all, still a better helmet on the Figuarts. The front piece here is a little bit more narrow on the Black Series, and the top of the helmet feels like it's really flat on the Black Series in comparison to the Figuarts. Now, looking at the legs, you can see the knee piece here is way bigger on the Black Series, and the Figuarts is much closer to the movie style. You can also see the ridges here, a little bit bigger on the Black Series, more extended, not a big deal. Moving to the back, you can see here on the belt, it's got the circle unlike the square in the Figuarts, and a notch circle unlike the smooth one here in the Figuarts. There's also some additional detail here in the back of the helmet in those gray areas, which is kind of surprising the Figuarts is missing that if it is indeed in the movie. There's some bad paint there on the Black Series, which is to be expected. And if you look at the chest piece here, you can kind of see as well, it should be a bit more narrow like it is on the Black Series. That's how it is in the movie. It's a bit wider than it should be on the Figuarts. Not a huge thing, although I do think it's a little bit too far raised on the Black Series. And I think the profile of it is a little bit closer on the Figuarts, but again, that width is a little off. And the eyes, I think the Figuarts does much better than the Black Series. I think they're much more movie accurate. The Black Series just kind of looks a little weird with the eyes. Now let's take a quick look at the accessories of the Figuarts. And it does come with one gun, a blaster pistol here. Sculpt is pretty good, nice detail on it. And no paint really on this gun at all. So now let's take a look at the hands. And it does come with a total of 3 sets of hands, 2 in the box and 1 that comes with it. And this is the open hand, slightly open hand. This is for holding the gun stock. There's 1 for each side of these, left and a right. And here we have the fists. These are what come installed on the figure. Again, a left and a right fist. And we also have the pointing finger of accusation, or the trigger finger. And again, there is a left and a right of these. You can see all the hands have pretty good sculpt, and the only paint on these is really just that white armor piece there. All of them are pretty clean. Yeah, there was 1 or 2 where it was a little bit of bleeding, but that's about it. So all in all, it's a great figure. A little bit of disappointment in the articulation, but otherwise, I still think it's one of the best Stormtrooper figures out there. Hope you enjoyed the review.